Harry Potter, and I live in Whitefish, Montana. I've chosen to present on the standard steel lookout tower plans. These were drawn and created in 1954 by the United States Forest Service for Region 7, which used to be the region of all the national forests on the East Coast: Vermont, New Hampshire, Pennsylvania, all the way down to the Virginia area. I chose these plans because I've always been fascinated by these structures and feel that they have a great place in history. Many are still currently in use and manned during the summer fire seasons, mainly on the West Coast, and others have become rental recreation cabins that you can rent out, and some, unfortunately, are in disrepair and totally abandoned. Regionally, throughout our country, there are many different unique styles of lookouts. Some are made of natural stone, many of wood, and a lot of the ones still standing, surviving today, are made of steel. The set of plans is really cool, as I mentioned earlier, because it could be used to build on the ground level, just a one story, or all the way up to 83.5 feet. As seen on the first page of the sheet here, there are different dimensions depending on how tall the structure is going to be built. One thing to keep in mind is that these structures were often built in extremely remote locations on mountaintops. The materials had to be easy to transport and strong enough to endure extreme elements. Here in the detail of the foundation, you can note that there are copper conduit wires around the foundation that lead into the ground. These will redirect lightning if the building is struck, which often happened. Here's a chart for the foundation layout to let you know the dimensions depending on how tall you're going to build the tower. Also, you can see a detail of the anchor bolts into the concrete piers. Looking at the tower now, you can see the stairs. Older versions of towers just had very tiny ladders on the side. This is more advanced with stairs with chain link fence on the side. Okay, so looking at the top living quarters here, it's roughly 13 by 13, and this was enough space for somebody to live and work all summer long. It was not an easy job. Mentally, I'm sure this job was challenging, but very much needed. You have to remember, before all the technology that we have today, this was the latest and greatest to detect fires. So when they'd see a smoke, they'd sight it in and relay the information so crews can get on it and start putting it out. The second sheet of the plans show the connections for the L-shaped struts that were used. There's a few different styles of connections depending on where the connection is on the structure. And also a breakdown of the stairs, which were a major component of the inside of the structure. Zooming in here to the stair landing detail, you can see that it'd be concrete on rock. And there's a bolt chart giving you all the information about the bolts that you'll need for the base. And here's a close-up of the base detail. So this would be the bottom where it connects to the concrete piers. Moving on to the third sheet of the plans, this page is all about the cab, which is the structure on top of the tower. Well, I'm not really an expert in construction or anything, but I would imagine building the tower wouldn't be too challenging, but by the time you got to this part, you'd have a lot more on your hands. You can notice there is a trap door, which is where the stairs enter the cab, and you would walk up the stairs and push up the trap doors and enter the cab. Okay, here we are on sheet 4, and this shows the front and side elevations. Here you can see they would have a chimney pipe on top to keep them warm. As you can imagine, being high up in the cold air on a mountaintop, a metal building would be cold. And you can note that they had wood framed around the inside. So not too much to note here. There's a door you can see. They would make these structures very secure, so when they left all winter they would close up nice. Here's a typical wall section. You can see there's the floor, you have the base, some trim, insulation, and then you go up to the insulation in the ceiling, and then there's the galvanized roof at the top. Here on the 5th page, it covers the floor framing as well as the roof framing. Not too much to note here. On a detail of the roof, you can see there was a ladder to access radio antenna or maintain the roof. Having a working radio in these towers is a major component, so they can relay any information down to the ground crews. Okay, here we are on the 6th and final page, and these details show all about these shutters. So very important, when they were done at the end of the season, they would close these things up tight and not come back until the spring. Alright, so here's a photo of some gentlemen putting the plans into action. I'm not certain through my research of who constructed these. If I had to guess, I would say that the rangers and various Forest Service personnel would do it themselves rather than contract it out. They usually would look at a task and just do it back then. And the construction, other than the concrete, is just basically all nuts and bolts. So I get one big erector set. Here you can see they're nearing completion of this tower. Like I mentioned earlier, once you get to the top, it would be quite a bit more work, but I believe constructing a tower wouldn't be too terrible, and it would be kind of fun, I think. And here's just a general overview of a completed tower, and you can tell this one's not too high, but it's pretty high up there, and there's a propane tank, so they must have switched over to propane heat after a while. A little safer not having a fire going. And here's a good photo of one where you can see that there's a really tall concrete pier. And if you look at the landscape it's built on, it's extremely rocky. So they were able to connect this right to the rock and they'd be pretty solid. As I begin to wrap up, I have a question for all you folks out there. I'm curious if you think you'd be able to make it through working in one of these all summer, all by yourself up on top of the mountain in a tower. Curious what your thoughts are on these structures, and I really hope you enjoyed this presentation. I think they're interesting, and personally I would really like to volunteer and help restore one of these structures. There's several thousand around the United States, and there's small groups all across the country that work to repair these and restore them to their former beauty. So keep an eye out for that, and next time you go hiking, maybe pick a mountain with a fire tower on it. Check it out. They're really fascinating engineering feats and pretty simple once you break it down piece by piece. So check them out, and if you have any interest, they're still hiring people for it. I think it's fairly easy to get a job as a lookout, so you could get right into one next summer.